This is Between the Lines. Today, we dissect the road less traveled.
Good morning, it's Carol here from Yulwan. We continue in this section that we call Between the Lines, where we are dissecting and talking chapter by chapter about this book, which is called The Road Less Traveled by Mr. Scott Peck. And at this time we have this chapter, which is called Problem Solving and Time. And first of all, I want to say that I'm not a psychiatrist or no psychologist, so if you detect something from these talkings or these readings that you need to address, maybe it's time for you to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist to talk about that. But yes, I am a coach, so we will talk about some perspectives from the book, but please have that in mind. And this episode is called The Mechanical Idiot because the doctor tells in this chapter that he was going around in the neighborhood and he always thought that he couldn't fix stuff, he couldn't fix things. He thought he was a mechanical idiot. He couldn't do things mechanical. He could repair the minds or help repair the minds of people, but he couldn't do physical things. And so he once was around his neighborhood and he saw his neighbor fixing a lawnmower, and he said, oh, I wish I could do that because I can see that you are good at repairing things, but I can't do that. It's something I really can't do. So his neighbor said, that is because you don't take the time to do it. And so he reflected after that, and he thought, well, maybe he's right. Maybe my neighbor really takes the time to fix things. And then he went out he had a problem with a patient that couldn't start her car. And so he said, okay, I will take my time and see if I can help her start the car. And he took his time. It took like 15 minutes or so. He said maybe if I had the knowledge, I could do that in less time. But he actually could help his patient. So he was happy about that. And he said, yes, sometimes we don't see how to repair things or how to solve problems because we don't take the time. We don't put the effort and the mind into doing so. So I think this chapter is really interesting because it's about taking the time to solve problems. So the doctor goes on and says that sometimes we say, oh, this problem is beyond me, or I just can't do that thing that you're doing. And I quite remember that for myself when I said, for example, I worked with artists at a time in a company that were amazing artists. They draw things that I could never imagine I could be able to. And at the time, I always, every day I saw them drawing and doing animations and those kind of things. And I always said, I can't do that. No, it's impossible for me. And they always tell me, you just have to practice. You just have to do it. Take your time, day after day, and practice. And it was until recently that I was at home and I only could be sitting, that I put myself with a tablet and started drawing, that I saw that's actually true. If you put the time into things, you can start drawing better and better and better. And so I think most of the things that we have and that we say, of course, if you have to have certain knowledge, but you can always start small and go from there, solving things. And this discipline, which is the main section of this book that we are talking about. So discipline is part of that, taking the time and putting the effort onto learning, onto solving things. And there is something else that Doctor says here in this chapter, which is the illusion that problems will solve themselves. And he tells really interesting stories. Every chapter has at least one really amazing story about that exemplifies these kind of things and how we tend to procrastinate in solving our problems, how we let them go by and see if they can solve themselves. And yeah, that's actually what's leaving you behind yourself or your own growth. It makes you stagnant, and so you get stuck. Or even he says that maybe you're not only stuck but degrading your learning, because if you're not learning, you are unlearning and you are degrading your own mind. And remember that the idea of this channel is to have our best possible mind cottage or mind palace. So we want to grow, we want to learn, and we want to become better. And one way to do that is by following these steps of discipline and problem solving. So many times we delay our problem solving because we don't want to suffer. That's the main idea of this book. We have to pass through this stage of suffering, even if suffering is, I don't know, taking a paper and saying, oh, this drawing that I have done right now is horrible. On the first one, maybe the first ones that you are going to do, in case you are drawing or whatever it is that you do, you might not be completely satisfied with the results, but or maybe you could see, as I am saying right now that I'm drawing, for example, that at first it took me so much time more than it actually does to complete something. So it's part of the process of learning and solving. And you have to go through that pain of or that suffering, he says, of seeing that the result is not quite the one you really would like to have in the future, or the result is not really appealing to you. But it's part of this process of learning and continue learning. And this learning is also problem solving. He says for most of the things it's he uses problem solving, even if it's learning or if it's solving parenting problems or office problems or anything that you want to overcome. He calls that problem solving. So he also says, remember that we saw the cake test in the previous episode, when he talks about how we are not willing sometimes to delay this gratification for later, and we just want to see, for example, in this case of drawing that I have stuck in my face, in my mind, I don't know why. For example, I say I want to become, I don't know, I want to really be happy with my drawings, but in the meantime, I have to accept that maybe I have to pass through that and see that my best drawings will not come yet. So I have to delay that gratification until I am happy enough with the drawings, for example. Or if you are doing a cake, maybe the first cake you do is not quite the best, or you're not quite satisfied with that, and maybe by continuing the practices and being able to suffer the process of not getting the result you really want is how you build this discipline and this learning and this solving, so in the future you will be better at doing the things that you want to do. So you have to delay the gratification, as we saw in the cake test. And in this suffering, the worst thing of it is that you say, okay, I won't suffer right now because I don't like the result. I will discontinue drawing and everything. But maybe in the future, I will want to go back to that. And this little snowflake, well, in the case of drawing, maybe it's not the same, but if you are not willing to suffer right now, he says, when you have this little bit problem or this little problem that is starting and you realize you should put some effort and some time of it on it, if you let it pass away and you sweep it under the rag or just try to forget about it, today is now a snowflake by snowflake by snowflake by snowflake. Then when you realize you have a snowball, right, it happens in the worst case scenarios with problems. They become something huge that you don't know how to solve, and it's actually even more painful than solving it when it's just a little thing, right? So Dr. Peck says, and I have it written down here because I found that really interesting. He says that by leaving problems aside or trying to forget about them, leaving them just be, what we do is we are being emotionally immature and psychologically primitive. And these are his exact words. Emotionally immature and psychologically primitive. So we are behaving like a child, basically. So if we want to grow and we want to learn and be able to mature and be an adult, we should be able to do that. The thing is, as we always say in these chapters, is that nobody tells us how. So this is the idea of this book, on how we can be more mature, how we can solve the problems in a timely, effective manner, we could say, in the best way possible. Well, he goes to mention some things, some cases in the book. I'm not going to talk about them, but he mentions these cases where things you could have taken up front them, but you let them pass and pass and pass, and then you have a lot of repercussions and bad consequences for you or for even for a group of people. So when we delay this problem solving, what doctor says is that this also we take it into our jobs, into our businesses, into our lives. So maybe sometimes it takes years, months before we take action into some problem with our children, with our companies, and with things that go on in our life. And sometimes, yes, problems may solve themselves, but it's not the norm. It's not in general. In general, we have to go up front and solve things, because what generally tends to happen is that problems go bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is the main idea of this chapter, and I hope you liked it. And if you liked it, please share it, like it, comment on the things you have learned from it. If you had this kind of experience in the past, from yourself, from other people that you have seen, and how we delay this problem solving. And also, if you liked it and you want to contribute with the channel in another way, you can also buy a coffee for me if you want at Coffee. I'll leave the link in the description and everything. So have a beautiful day and see you in the next chapter. Bye bye.
Stay tuned for Ulua's next episode.